Welcome to Ilfracombe. Here we are on Ilfracombe seafront, just above Mouth Beach. Then there to our left. Have a little look at it. Quite a shingly beach. As most of Ilfracombe beaches are, with the exception of the harbour beach, which is golden sand. Sometimes on older postcards, mainly from the, say, 50s and 60s, early 60s, you'll see Mouth Beach depicted as a golden sandy beach. And a lot of people say, oh, it's been photoshopped. But actually, what used to happen here back in the late 50s, early 60s, I can remember, Ilfracombe Urban District Council used to have a lot of sand brought in on a couple of sand dredgers that worked the Bristol Channel, mainly around the Toll and Torridge estuary over at Bournemouth Bideford end. And they would dredge up the sand, bring it into Ilfracombe, and it was offloaded onto the cove into a couple of concrete bins they had there. And then at the onset of the season, maybe around May time, don't know exactly when they used to do it, I can't remember, but they would get their lorries, load them up one at a time down on the cove. They would bring it up here, they'd reverse it up to the railings on the wall there and tip it over. And then the IUPC tractor drive down onto the beach, level it all out. So you did have a golden sandy beach for a while. Although it was always a problem, of course, because the tide comes in twice a day and it would get washed away quite quickly. There used to be a bathing pool there with a little girl in pink and the dog guard at the moment. There used to be a bathing pool, a paddling pool really, to be honest, not very deep. It was quite high. It's a concrete construction and it was quite high above the river, and health and safety said that that couldn't be and they took it away. So that's gold. The main seafront road is called Wilder Road, not Wilder Road. It is spelt the same as Wilder, but the local pronunciation is Wilder because it's the River Wilder which comes out onto that beach, Mouth Beach. So it all corresponds. New play area there for the kiddies. Capstone Hill. You can see a zigzag path climbing up over the hill. That was cut out in 1894. Again, it's all changed here. That was termed as the clapping circle, just ahead of us there. And this lump of grass in front of Capstone, which is where the Victoria Pavilion used to stand. The Victoria Pavilion was built in 1888. It was 100 feet long, 30 feet wide, and it was built to commemorate Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee, which was 1887 actually. They were a bit late finishing it, and Queen Victoria was invited down to open the pavilion, but she never came, unfortunately. She never ever came to Ilfracombe. A lot of people think she did, but she didn't. And this pavilion, it was described by get it in a second, hang on. John Ruskin, back in the day, he was the art critic for the Times newspaper. He described the pavilion as a cucumber frame, which is in fact really what it was. It was like a giant greenhouse, and right in the middle of it there was a stage, and local bands used to go in there to play. I think it was all free, but if you had a chair, you had to pay for it. You would pay rent on the chair, so to speak. You could actually walk in and stand, and it wouldn't cost you anything. At least I think that's right. And then over the years, this changed as well. And in 1925, they pulled down the middle section of the old Victoria Pavilion and erected what became known as the Victoria Pavilion Theatre, which left a greenhouse, so to speak, on either side of it, east and west wing. That's how I remember it as a child, right up until my late teens, or early 20s to be fair. And in 1972, they demolished the two glass wings. They were all made of raw iron, constructed by McLean's of Glasgow, who were raw iron specialists, and it had started to deteriorate because the glass was a problem as well. So they did demolish it all and erected two concrete monstrosities either side of the Pavilion Theatre. The west wing, the left side, if you look at it, that was the carousel bar, which was open all the time. Obviously it was a bar. And on the east wing, they used to hold art exhibitions and things like that in there. So there wasn't something in there all the time, but only on occasions. And then late 80s, I think it was, we had a bit of a storm here in Ilfracombe, and the sea was coming up over the seawall there from Wilder's Mouth. It went around the back of the Pavilion Theatre, and it caused a lot of damage to it. They said it was irreparable. So it finally got demolished. And to be quite honest, most of it's still sitting underneath that grass bank. We just sort of levelled it out and put the topsoil on top of it, seeded it. But then we had a new theatre built, which was this one over here, the one with the cooling towers on the top, which reminds me of a power station. It's called the Landmark Theatre. A lot of people love it. Personally, I don't. And Capstone Hill itself was the property back in the Victorian period. It was the property of a man by the name of Sir Bouchier Ray, who was the lord of the manor here. And yeah, that bit of land belonged to him. He sold it to the council in 1877 for the lovely price of £2,500, which was a lot of money back then. A lot of money. He did make a stipulation that it had to stay as a recreational ground for the people of Ilfracombe. And it still remains that really, although they don't keep it quite so nice as they used to back in the day. I said when Ilfracombe Urban District Council was running it, that was mowed quite regularly. Last year they didn't mow it at all. It looked shocking, absolutely shocking. They have mowed this front bit this year, and you might be able to make out some letters there in the grass. It's actually VEVJ 80. So they had what we term as living letters. It's been done on several occasions throughout the years. I think the first one was something like 1909. I will verify that to put on the video. It's done by some factory workers from Manchester, and they put the word Devon up with all the people, and then a photographer by the name of Batten took a photograph of it, and it appeared in a newspaper in Manchester. Nobody in Ilfracombe knew that happened until somebody went to Manchester and saw the newspaper and sent the cutting back to the council. And ever since that, they've done all sorts with it, living letters wise. Peace Day, back in 1919, whenever there was a change of monarch, that would have been celebrated. Yes. And as I say, we just had the VEVJ Day done. And they did that weekend before last, I think. And over here, we've got Preacher's Rock right in front of us. Again, back in my younger day, there was on a Sunday always somebody preaching here. Could have been a church, could have been a lay preacher, or it could have been the man that used to walk around Ilfracombe with a big board up over him saying the end is nigh. Can't remember his name, but he would sometimes come here and talk. If there was nobody here, he'd have a go. And of course, if people wanted to listen, they listened. In amongst the rock here, you can see chisel marks, and this goes back to the 1850s when they were starting to build St. Philip and St. James's Church, which you can see just off there to our right. You can see the steeple of it anyway. It's having a lot of work done to it at the moment. The front wall there has to be remortared. It's leaking quite badly at the moment, so that's all got to be done. And anyway, when they were building that church, they used a lot of the rock from the rocks around Wildersmith Beach. They actually made quite a lot of the rocks smaller by chiselling stuff off the top of them. And nowadays, the Northampton District Council have put this metal railing along the front of it to stop people climbing up onto it because of that fissure. They say that it could be dangerous, it could collapse. It's been like that ever since I've known it. There's a bit of grass growing in it now, that's because nobody goes up there anymore. Or very few. Some people do still go up. But you know what people are like. Say no and they will. And this is the entrance to what's known as Capstone Parade. Again, this has changed since I was a kid. There used to be a gateway just there, and you could go through this gateway down those steps down there onto the beach that way. But again, back the late 70s, I think it would have been, maybe even earlier, the sand disappeared from the bottom, and there was an almighty drop from the bottom step down onto the beach. And of course the council said, oh no, we can't be having that. And they cordoned it all off with the railings more down there, as you can see. And then over time, the beaches, and nobody's done that manually, that's just nature being nature. And so it's not a terrific drop now. Anyway, Capstone Parade, you can see the side of Capstone that shored up to stop falling rock, which of course could be dangerous to people, so that is obviously a very good idea. And this railing here, chainmail, whatever you want to call it, I don't know what you call it, that was put up to stop children climbing up there, which we used to do as kids. I've got to admit, I never got to the top. I still don't like heights. But it's all the way around there, different bits being shorn up. In coming weeks they'll be doing some more, to be honest. We had a bit of falling rock just up around the corner a bit. And also the little wall on our right is starting to break away. So it's all got to be sorted out. They say it'll take a month. Yeah, right. Looking across the bay, and you see that big property standing up there all by itself. And that was actually built as the Granville Hotel, which was a temperance hotel at the time. Of course, that all changed over the years, and it did end up with a bar. But nowadays, it's no longer a hotel, it's actually apartments. Very nice apartments apparently as well. I've never been in there, but they say it's very nice. And of course, has a great outlook. You know, you see the bits of railing being put up here that is stopping you walking too close to the rock. And this is where it's falling down again. Not a great deal at the moment, but you know, better safe than sorry, isn't it? And ahead of us there is where the wall is a bit loose, going out over to the bay. And that's the big crack in it. Morning. While they're at it, they could put a new seat there, couldn't they? I won't hold me breath. And just here we come into what is known locally as Windy Corner. And believe me, if there's a force time gale blowing, it's not a nice place to be. But the Victorians used to come here and just stand here when it was blowing like that. They loved it. The actual locals just refer to the path as Windy Corner. They never say Capstone Parade, they just say, oh, let's go up around Windy Corner. But it is known as Capstone Parade, that is its proper name. Understandably, because we're walking around Capstone. Looking out over the Bristol Channel here. And directly in front of us is the South Wales coast. It's a bit difficult to see today, it's quite hazy over there. But it's a lovely day, so that's why. to our left, you can normally see Lundy Island, but again we can't see that. There's a bit of headland that comes out at the end of this Bow Point. And round the other side of that, you'd come to Moorhill, Ilfracombe. There's another little parade just down here. I don't know if this is a later edition or what, to be fair. I haven't come across that yet. But if I do, I'll add it. It's only a short one. And it's very popular down there for anglers. That's right down there. It's only a short one. It comes up just down there on the left hand side. And lots of paths leading up now to Capstone. That's the steepest one just there. And of course, before they built the parade, I don't suppose there was any paths on this side of Capstone, because it was just a cliff coming down to the sea. And these paths would have all been constructed after they built Capstone Parade. Ahead of us there, you can see what we know locally as Lantern Hill. There's a little chapel on the top of the hill, which is dedicated to St Nicholas, and on top of that is a lantern. It's classed as a lighthouse, but it doesn't revolve. It is just basically a beacon, a lantern, and it is the oldest lighthouse in Britain. And then slightly to the left of that, you can just see the back end of the pier and the big hill, the other side of the bay. That's Hillsborough, and it's known locally as the Sleeping Elephant. You get it in the right context, and it's like an elephant's head with the trunk coming down in front and the ear sort of slightly behind it. And then further out again, and you go to the other side of Heel with that headland leading out. You may be able to make out there's 4 cottages on there, white cottages, which were all Coast Guard's cottages at one time. It's still the headquarters for the Coast Guards, but these days all the Coast Guards are volunteers, so no actual Coast Guards live there, I don't think, anyway. Not unless they're volunteers. Right, so a little bit of the history of Capstone Parade. I was always led to believe, looking since I've been doing bits of history on Ilfracombe, that the parade was actually started in 1841 and finished in 1843. But that's incorrect. So I found a cutting from the North Devon Journal for 1843, when they were celebrating the opening of the parade on the 29th of September 1843. And they had a big tent erected at the beginning of the parade, where we were earlier, sort of in front of Preacher's Rock, I think it must have been, because they said that the back of the tent was open and the band was sitting on the rock. So I'm assuming that it was Preacher's Rock, because that's the only one I think you could sit on there. Oh, just having a drink of water, sorry about that. What we're standing in front of at the moment with this bench on it is what was known as the North Bandstand. We used to have 3 bandstands in Ilfracombe. One, which I forgot to mention, down on the seafront. I can come back to that then later. This one here was the North Bandstand. And then there was the East Bandstand, which used to be on the pier itself. And then you got 2 shelters, which didn't used to look like that originally, but they were there nonetheless. The bandstand used to have a roof on it, which was supported by wrought iron posts. I don't know, 5 or 6 posts used to hold the roof on. But over the years, of course, they rusted away and it got a bit dangerous, so they took it all away and have just left it like that. It's a shame we didn't put another roof on it, but there you go. All down to money at the end of the day. Anyway, back to my story. So they erected a big tent at the start of the parade. All took place on 29th of September 1843. And it was a 55-foot by 40-foot tent. And they had seating for 300 people. And over the course of the day, they were doing teas for people. And they actually served over 800 teas. Whether it was just cups of tea or a cup of tea and a slice of cake or something, goodness only knows. But they served 800, sorry. And the following day, they celebrated with the men that built the parade. Now, basically, these men had all been out of work men, vagabonds and stuff like that, as they described them. And when they came into the town, if they were vagabonds, they set them to work on the parade. And they were paid a shilling a day with a loaf of bread. Quite a good price when you think about it, a shilling a day in 1842, because that's when they built it. And so a shilling a day, yeah, quite a lot of money really back then. You must have had for high old time every night in the pub. So, on this write-up about the party, well, yeah, we'll call it a party, shall we? Because they're celebrating the opening of it. The chairman of the Board of Health at the time, Board of Health was the forerunner to the Town Council, or Ilfracombe Urban District Council. And the chairman at that time was a man by the name of Mr. Thomas Stab. He was a surgeon. Great name for a surgeon, Mr. Stab. Anyway, he got up and did an address to everybody. Of course, the first seating in the tent was all the gentry of the town, which we did have quite a bit in those days. And he congratulated the 2 men who were instrumental in the building of this parade. One was a man by the name of Thomas Chiswell, who was a builder, and the other was a man by the name of John Toms, that's right, John Toms. And he was actually a boot and shoe maker. But they were both members of the Board of Health. And Thomas Chiswell had properties in the town at that time. And anyway, they came down to look at it, Thomas Chiswell and John Toms. And Chiswell said that they could make this pathway going across the top of the rocks. It would mean knocking the tops of some rocks. All of the loose stuff would go in between the crevices in this. And they used other masonry and stuff filling up the cracks. And of course mortar, I would assume. And it got opened, as I say, 29th of September 1843. And Mr. Stab said that less than 12 months ago, this didn't exist, not even as an idea. So it was obviously 1842 that they built it, and they took less than 12 months to do it, which is quite clever really back in them days, because it was all hand tools, wasn't it? Well, mainly hand tools, should assume. But then it was when they'd finished, it was only a very narrow path, and there was no sea wall like this one here. This didn't exist. It was a very narrow path, and people had to be very careful on it. Anyway, in 1858, they decided they were going to widen the path. And they started at the eastern end and made their way to the west. But not long had they started when one gentleman complained to the Board of Health, saying that they were destroying rocks, destroying the scenery, this, that, and the other. And he wanted Sir Boucher to come and look at it and say whether they could or they couldn't. Well, but Sir Boucher had already given his permission to have the pathway built, and he actually gave £10 towards the scheme, because it was all done by public subscription, the original path, and it cost just upwards of £220 to achieve the path. That's the equivalent of about £30,000 spent money today. I'd like to see somebody come and do this now for £30,000. Never happened, would it? Anyway, they left the work after this gentleman had complained, until Sir Boucher had come down. And as he rounded the corner down on the eastern end, he said, "Oh, this is much better, carry on." So they did, they carried on, and they widened it, also erecting the sea wall, much to the enjoyment of a lot of the paraders, promenaders, whatever you want to call them. Out of the craft out here today, having a nice day for it. That's it. Making our way round now to the eastern end. Stretches for about half a mile, thereabouts. The Victorians absolutely loved it. There's one or two photographs with people all on the paths, sitting on the grass, sitting on the seats, possibly listening to a band on North Bandstand. But, I mean, at the end of the day, they didn't have a lot else to do, did they? They thoroughly enjoyed the promenade. And again, it was only done because some people had complained that Ilfracombe didn't have a promenade close by the sea. So this is why the path was made originally. And just ahead of us here you can see a little opening, and that leads us to 40 steps, as they're known. And also known as Smuggler's Cove. Now, I've always believed, again, that these steps were built in 1841 by John Toms, the boot and shoemaker. But again, that's not right. They were built in 1858 when they widened the path. So whether John Toms actually built these, I'm now unsure. I haven't found anything to say otherwise. But they actually lead down to what was known as Capstone Beach. And as you can see, not a lot of sand down there. So whether there was in 1843 when they made the original path, I don't know. Obviously I don't know, I wasn't around then. Feels like I was, but I wasn't. But it's quite possible that there was sand there. And of course it's all washed away over the years. Yeah, so the steps actually date from 1858. And as I'll say it again, they made a good job of it because they're still there. And here's a closer sort of look at Lantern Hill. Slightly in front of it, to the right, is a sea defence wall, which was erected in the 1980s. Prior to that being there, it actually sits on Chain Beach. Chain is actually spelt C-H-E-Y-E-N, C-H-E-Y-N-E, but pronounced Chain. And prior to that being there is a wall a little bit further in, which would have, I don't know, it measured something like about 20 feet high, something in that region. But when you had very bad storms, you know, gale force winds, high tide, and the tide would crash up against the wall and literally go right over the top of it into the backyards of the houses down on the quay. Well, I say houses, but there were restaurants down there. And of course all the tide would go in the back door. And then they'd just sweep it out the front door and put it back into the harbour. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And then again, just in front of that is another bit of cliff with grass on the top of it, which was known as Compass Hill. And there used to be houses on top of Compass Hill. I don't know why it's called Compass Hill, but it does face north. And I just wonder if the mariners would go up there to set their compasses or sextants or whatever it is they use to the north, so they make sure it was right. I don't know. But as I say, there were a lot of properties up there which were demolished in the 1890s. It was classed as a slum area. There was a lot of laundresses up there. Used to do the washing for other people. And apparently there were some ladies of the night as well. Who knows? It's shored up here as well. Got big bolts running through. I always wonder what they attach to. There's 40 steps from a different angle down onto Capstone Beach. Nobody calls it Capstone Beach these days. I expect there's a lot of locals that don't actually know it's called Capstone Beach, but it is. a couple of information boards as you go around, giving you the names of the certain birds that you see around here. You do see seals and dolphins and all sorts of things like that at times. And this is bringing us around to the eastern end of the parade. And just in front of us here we've got Capstone Terrace, Capstone Crescent. Goes by both names, unusually. They were all hotels at one time. Hotels, guest houses. They're apartments now, I think, most of them. And the last one here, the grey building, that was the Rockcliffe Hotel. Back in the Victorian period, there was a shop just on the end of it, which later became a cafe. I remember it as the Seagull Cafe. But prior to that, it was a photographic studio. One of the photographers that landed in Ilfracombe, he set up a studio here. It's just a backyard now. Morning.
Morning.
Morning. This is something I like. Just on the end of it, the old sign for the Capstone Parade, Coast Path, done in the lovely old blue tiles that we used to have all the way around town. Every road had that as their nameplate. Now all been replaced by tin, of course, metal. Doesn't look as pretty as that, does it?